Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the March 2026 Council Agenda Briefing. We acknowledge and pay our respects to the traditional custodians of this land, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and their elders past and present. I would like to advise everyone that the video and audio of this meeting is being live streamed to YouTube. I request everyone to please turn off your mobile phones. I remind you that audio recording of the meeting proceedings and photography within the chamber is prohibited unless prior approval has been granted, and councillors and city officers are reminded to disclose any declarations of financial interests and interests affecting impartiality and are requested to activate their microphones when addressing the meeting. So, with that, welcome everyone. Item 1 is the declaration of opening, and I declare this meeting open at 1 minute past 6 p.m. Items for Council. Agenda items 2, 3, 6, 7, 8.1, 8.2, 9, 11, 13 and 14 will be dealt with at the ordinary council meeting to be held on 24 March 2026. Item 4 is attendances. Item 4.1 is apologies, and I've received apologies from Councillor Bronwyn Moore and Councillor Tim Howling. Items, let's be courteous in the gallery, please. Items 4.2 is approved leaves of absence, of which there is nil for this evening. Item 5 is declarations of interest. There's a few here. Mayor Greg Milner, that's me. I've declared an impartiality interest in item 10.3.1, as I know a number of the members of the Royal Perth Golf Club. Councillor Kathy Lees has declared an impartiality interest in item 10.3.1, as prior to my election, I requested that a property that is the subject of a place-specific review under this item be considered for heritage listing. As a consequence, there may be a perception that my impartiality on the matter may be affected. However, I declare that I will consider this matter on its merits and vote accordingly. And Councillor Kathy Lees has also declared an impartiality interest in item 10.4.3, as I know and have worked with some of the candidates. As a consequence, there may be a perception that my impartiality on the matter may be affected. However, they are not closely associated persons, and I declare that I will consider the matter on its merits and vote accordingly. Councillors, does anyone else have any interests they'd like to declare? Councillor Raison.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In relation to item 10.3.1, the heritage matters that are on that list, one of my children attended Wesley College, and in recent years I participated in strategy think tanks at Wesley College with other business leaders. At no time have property or heritage matters been discussed with me, and on this basis I'm comfortable that I do not have any conflict of interest and consider this agenda item, we'll consider it impartially. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Raison. Councillors, any further declarations that anyone would like to make? Councillor Lees?
Yes, Mr Mayor, I just wanted to add to my declaration in relation to 10.3.1 that I do also know some members of the Royal Perth Golf Club, but again, I don't think my impartiality will be affected by that. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any other declarations, councillors? No. Okay. That brings us to item 8, which is presentations, and item 8.3, which is deputations. Now, we originally had 17 speakers presenting deputations to council tonight, which is a tremendous amount of community interest in tonight's agenda. I do want to thank each and every community member who took the time to make a submission and to come here this evening to make a deputation. We do appreciate that you're all very busy people and that your time and effort is valued, and we do appreciate it enormously. This afternoon, Councillor Tim Howling sent an email stating that he wishes to withdraw item 12.2 from the agenda for tonight's meeting and next week's ordinary council meeting. And I've since received an email from the City CEO confirming that item 12.2 is withdrawn from the agenda. So I understand that the City Administration has endeavoured to contact each of the 14 community members who have submitted deputation requests to speak against item 12.2, But if there is anyone in the gallery tonight who didn't receive that message and is here solely to speak to item 12.2, then I'm letting you know now that item 12.2 has been withdrawn from the agenda, and there will not be an opportunity for people to make deputations about item 12.2. With that, I'd like to invite Mr Scott Carmichael of South Perth, who is speaking against the officer recommendation at item 10.3.1. Welcome to Mr Carmichael. The microphone is yours, and we look forward to your deputation.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm speaking about the heritage survey of 49 Forest Street, South Perth. We've just moved into there this past Christmas. My family and I love our new house and the surrounding area and community. We do not consider the Heritage Survey rating of Category 2 for 49 Forest Street. We dispute this on the grounds that the categories are very important to the local heritage of the area. The property's been significantly changed and updated. These examples include a kitchen, a bathroom, all bedrooms and drawing room have been updated and renovated and do not display original features. And the fireplace is missing also. While we don't intend to significantly develop 49 Forest Street, I believe the administrative hurdles and inclusion on the Heritage Register would be a burden and not effective and be no effective upside for the community. We do support a Category 4 listing for the property, which we think this is much more effective category. It has elements of values worth noting for the community interest, but otherwise makes no contribution to heritage value. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you very much for your deputation, Mr Carmichael. I'll just get you to hold up for a moment. Ordinarily in the past, at this point, after someone such as yourself has made a deputation to council, ordinarily I would throw it open to councillors to ask questions of the person making the deputation, if the elected members would like to do so. But last month I did announce that I would, from now on, I'm going to ask the person making the deputation if they would like to take questions from elected members or whether they're happy just to present their deputation and leave it there.
Very happy to.
Would you like questions?
Yes.
Okay. Councillors, would anyone like to ask Mr Carmichael any questions about his deputation? Councillor Lees.
Thank you for the deputation, Mr Carmichael, and welcome to South Perth if you weren't here already. Do you know if there have been any internal alterations done over the last 2 years?
I'm not aware when they were done, but they're significant inside, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you said the kitchen, the bathroom, which other rooms was it?
All the bedrooms. And the drawing room and the dining room are quite original, but the fireplace is missing from the drawing room.
Okay, but there's another fireplace somewhere else.
Mm.
Yeah, okay. All right, thank you. One further question, if I may, Mr Mayor.
Yeah, of course.
I am aware that other local governments offer incentives to homeowners with heritage listed buildings in terms of potential financial incentives or assistance with the assessment of the places and the alterations that you might be proposing. Would you be open to something along those lines if your property was listed?
We don't intend any alterations that are significantly going to alter the property at all. I just going down the line, I don't think the Category 2 rating would enhance anything. I don't see the reason for it, especially since all the changes have been made, and we don't intend on making any changes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any further questions for Mr Carmichael, councillors? No. Thank you very much for your deputation. I'd now like to invite Ms Lena Yatchman. I hope I've pronounced that correctly. Oh, excellent. Of South Perth, who is speaking against the officer recommendation at item 10.3.1. Welcome to you. The microphone is yours.
I also have a presentation.
We look forward to your deputation. Governance, looks like we've got that queued up, ready to go.
Let me just test that. I'll figure it out as I go, I guess. Okay. I'll leave it to you, Jane.
Okay. So I'll introduce myself. So, I'm Lorica Story. I'm the Director of Finance and Resources at Wesley College. Thank you for the time this evening to address councillors in relation to the recommendation. In my portfolio at Wesley, I'm responsible for the planning and execution of the college's capital works program. So Wesley's been part of South Perth for over 100 years, and we value the college's place in the city's history. We've demonstrated that we value history through our guiding principles, which are to honour the past, bring the community together and create a legacy. Heritage and the conservation of heritage is both celebrated and embedded in all our practices, including campus planning. Many school campuses have a mixture of architectural styles depending on trends at the time, creating a patchwork quilt of quite a hot mess. But this has not been the Wesley approach. The college is an exemplar for creating a campus that has a consistency of design across heritage-listed stock and new developments. The college has adopted a distinctly Wesley approach to development. That includes the gable roofs, consistency of colour and tone of terracotta and masonry with the white elements on windows and the entrances, and a strong masonry craftsmanship with featured brick panelling in all our builds. From our original buildings to our middle school buildings constructed in the 2000s to our latest centenary project, the distinctly Wesley can be seen. The college is committed to balancing development with maintaining links to our past and the value placed on being a village within the South Perth community. The college has concerns with the recommendation that the entire lot remain within the heritage list mapping. A particular query is the inclusion of our boarding house without confirmed detail of the heritage value of said building. Our developments over the years have demonstrated that Wesley is committed to maintaining its significant place in South Perth, both respectfully and responsibly. We understand the city's obligations to have a heritage list. Our concern about our listing is not coming from a place of removing or replacing heritage to make way for development. We are seeking that our heritage listing reflects the significant places that the community and college value, whilst balancing the college's need to evolve with the changing education landscape. The recommendation as presented creates a planning limitation that does not enable the college to remain agile to meet the needs of its key stakeholders, the students of the next 100 years.
Dear councillors, my name is Lena from Row Group, and I am addressing council tonight regarding 10.3.1. As you are likely aware, Wesley College and Row Group have spoken on this item before, and as Lorica outlined, Wesley College is a supporter of heritage conservation, but is also required to evolve and respond to those student and community needs. When we first engaged in this process, it was due to the fact that the entire site of 40 Coode Street was to be included on the heritage list, as opposed to aligning the local heritage list with the curtilage from the State Heritage Register, which is the red thing on the board. Wesley College was asking for a more nuanced approach to the future heritage listing of the place, having due regard to how this site has evolved through the last century. With the current State Register listing, the heritage is protected, while also facilitating the need to evolve that schools are constantly faced with. As you are aware, Council considered this request and then decided to investigate this further with initiating the place-specific heritage reviews. Wesley College also helped by facilitating a site visit and providing information on how they honour the heritage at the college. However, it appears that the original intent of this exercise is not actually reflected in the Heritage Consultant's report. The consultant's recommendations include the inclusion of the entirety of the site as opposed to only the curtilage defined under the state register. Moreover, an additional lot is recommended to be included within the heritage survey and the heritage list as a category 1 place, namely lot 500 Coode Street, which is just north of the college. No heritage significance has previously been awarded to this lot, neither on state or local level. Further, the recommendation includes the introduction of 2 zones of significance within that category 1 place, 1 primary zone of significance and 1 secondary zone of significance. The primary zone of significance is proposed to not only include the state-registered heritage buildings, but, as Lorica already mentioned, the boarding house and the Mildred Manor Science Building, which were also not previously awarded statutory heritage protection under the state register. The secondary zone of significance is then proposed to include pretty much everything else, including the swimming pool or the Centenary Building and the middle school buildings. This does not only introduce 3 additional heritage layers to the one already determined under the state register, but it also leaves the questions for landowners and applicants on how the city actually intends to process applications, as the report simply states, areas within secondary zones of significance still require referral to the city for comment. Further direction is required to understand whether this allows for development flexibility and truly doesn't introduce additional statutory measures, as outlined in the report, or whether it results in the need to seek approval from the city on all development works, including those that are currently exempt. Further, the original intent of seeking a nuanced approach while allowing this flexibility appears to have been lost, as the recommended heritage curtilage now actually extends further and includes even more buildings than were previously anticipated, namely the boarding house and the Mildred Manning Science Building. Including more buildings within the curtilage would rather restrict the development outcomes that could be achieved, and the college does have future plans eventually to upgrade facilities on site. And lastly, it is difficult to understand the reasoning for introducing a secondary zone of significance for the inclusion of aspects such as the swimming pool or the Centenary Building, which, as you can see on the slides, are currently construction sites. Accordingly, we request Council to introduce a real balance between heritage considerations and ongoing evolution, particularly in the context of Wesley College, which is already honouring heritage and including this distinct Wesley way in anything they do. We kindly request Council to amend the local heritage survey in regard to Wesley College and only include the buildings that are also listed under the State Heritage Register and not apply additional statutory heritage layers in regard to buildings or even additional lots. Thank you very much. We're very happy to take questions.
Thank you for the deputation. Councillors, any questions for either of our 2 presenters? Councillor Brenda Abrandis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you very much for your deputation. You mentioned the boarding house and the science building specifically. Can you just provide me a bit of information as to the quality of those buildings, the vintage of those buildings, and why they might be considered worth inclusion? Because I know you obviously consider they don't, but I wouldn't mind your views on those buildings specifically.
Lorica?
So, in relation to the Mildred Manning Science Building, whilst the original date is 1956, there's been significant development of that building, and I would question with the volume of the building what heritage value is remaining from that development that was completed, I think, in 2017. Apologies on dates, I commenced Wesley in 2023. So in relation to the boarding house, again, that is given it was 1960s and through planning and I guess refurbishments and changes of that building over time, I question the actual amount of the building from the 1960s that is still of significant heritage value given the proportion of the building it would be. So when we did the tour of the boarding house, there was a plaque remaining from the old building, but it has been refurbished a number of times since the 60s, so that plaque may just have been there for time's sake, more than a large component of that building still remaining as the 1960s building.
Thank you very much for that explanation. And just a couple of follow-up questions. 1950s and 60s buildings in your collection of buildings, are they the only two from that vintage? And are they pretty much in their sort of original constructed state, or have they been substantially modified over the years?
Substantially modified, both of them.
And are they the only two buildings from the 1950s, 60s in the Wesley collection?
That question I couldn't answer on notice. No.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Any further questions? Councillor Raison.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you for your deputation. Just one question, which I'm happy to be provided the information, or I can find it separately. The State Heritage Register curtilage, do you know the year, the last time that was reviewed?
Not on top of my head, I believe the entries from 2009. That's when they were entered. So there was a big heritage review previously from Hocking Heritage Architecture, if I'm not mistaken, reviewing the place. Yeah, but I would have to double check to make sure it's 2009.
Thank you. I'll check with the administration. Thank you.
Any further questions, councillors? No. Thank you both very much for your deputation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd now like to invite Dr John Bassett of Como, who is speaking for the officer recommendation at item 10.3.1. Welcome to you, Dr Bassett. The microphone is yours, and we look forward to your deputation.
Thank you. As mentioned, I wanted to speak in favour of item 10.3.1, the Local Heritage Survey Space Specific Review. I wish to support the recommendation be updated to include the to include the recommendations of the most recent Heritage Consultants report, and I sort of make the point that that is an independent consultants report. There seems to have been a lack of understanding on the part of some councillors around the designation of heritage significance. Although there may be a question of what is held to be significant by a particular community, it should be recognised that there is a codified method of assessment as outlined in the Heritage Council's Guide to Assessing Cultural Heritage Significance. That guide is informed by the Borough Charter, a long-standing guide to recognising significance. I also, just with the previous presentations, make the point that there tends to be an attitude that a heritage listing means you can't do anything to the property. That is, I hope most of us know is not the case at all. So what we've seen in the discussion of heritage values at council is reports made by independent consultants being discounted by councillors who have not demonstrated any expertise in the field. It should be recognised that counting the excellent initial review conducted by council officers, we are now at the third review of these properties. So I recommend that councillors look to the people who have expertise in the field and adopt the recommendation rather than paying attention to misinformed Facebook posts. And yes, I'll take questions.
All right. Thank you for your deputation. Councillors, any questions for Dr Bassett? Looks like you got off easy tonight. Thank you for the deputation. All right. I'd now like to invite Ms Heidi Schmidt of South Perth, who is speaking for the officer recommendation at item 10.3.1. Welcome to you, Ms Schmidt. The microphone is yours, and we look forward to your deputation.
Good evening, Mr Mayor, councillors, our very most welcome monitor, Gail McGowan, and city officers. I'm speaking for the officer's recommendation for 10.3.1 to protect our unique and irreplaceable heritage places and to ensure they receive statutory protection under our city's local planning scheme. The city's recommendation is straightforward and based on expert assessment. Number one, note the outcomes of the place-specific reviews, and number two, update the local heritage survey accordingly, as per the experts' advice. Since last October, many in our community were shocked to learn that attempts had been made by some councillors to delist or downgrade several important heritage places, including 39 Anstey Street, the last intact weatherboard cottage in the area, 40 Cooge Street, Wesley College, 25 Forest Street, now known as the St Columba's Church Group, Royal Perth Golf Club, and 49 Forest Street, which was 44 Angelo Street, which is an important architectural and Anzac-related treasure. I will speak specifically, firstly, to Place 39, currently labelled the St Columba's Church Group. This grouping is inherently problematic. St Columba's Church and St Columba's Primary School share one site, belong to one Catholic order, and share one landholding at 25 Forest Street. St Joseph's Convent, however, at 16 York Street is entirely separate. It is run by a different Catholic order. It is owned by a different entity to the St Columba's Church and School. It sits on a different parcel of land, divided by Alexandra Street. Heritage experts have been clear. St Joseph's Convent is a Category 1 place and must have its own place record, separate from the St Columba's sites. Their advice is consistent, evidence-based, and grounded in the prime significance of this place. This matters because St Joseph's is now being marketed as a development opportunity with an enormous sign, with images of high-rise towers and sweeping city views, aimed, target marketed to overseas investors, in its own words. These would not be homes for families, nor would they be affordable. This would do nothing to address the housing crisis. The surrounding neighbourhood is all low-scale residential single homes and townhouses. Nothing nearby supports a high-rise development. Local residents already face daily traffic gridlock preventing common access and egress from our own homes. During school drop-off and pick-up at St Columba's Primary School, emergency vehicles cannot access 2 whole blocks of York Street. Cars block intersections, verges are used for parking, even driving across no standing zones to do so, creating dangerously hazardous conditions for children, adult pedestrians and drivers as vehicles reverse off verges and into oncoming traffic. Zoo staff already fill every available parking bay in the area. A large development here would make an already hazardous and unsafe situation even worse. I don't want to call the ambulance. Although state listed, the community wants St Joseph's retained individually on our local heritage list at the highest level as recommended by the experts, not lumped together with the separate St Columba's group. This acknowledges its deep historical significance, including its connection to Australia's only saint, St Mary MacKillop, and ensures its story, buildings and gardens are preserved. St Joseph's Convent and its surrounds must remain their own heritage place, separate from the St Columba's sites, which are owned by different orders in different states and clearly divided by a residential street. I will also address 49 Forest Street, formerly 44 Angelo Street. Last year, an attempt was made to downgrade this property from Category 2 to Category 3 via a motion from a councillor representing Sydney-based investors who had no connection to our community. They didn't live there for the just over 2 years they owned the property. The address was then changed on the advice of a Dalkeith real estate agent to assist a faster sale of what was a short-term investment property. This property's been sold now, but is greatly intact. The place-specific review has now confirmed what locals already knew. The home should remain listed at Category 2, and as the experts have very recently discovered, its internal features, contrary to a previous speaker, do hold significant heritage value as per the report by the experts. Councillors, please uphold the heritage experts' independent findings and protect all of those listed precious and irreplaceable community heritage places that form part of our shared identity by retaining them on our local heritage list. Thank you.
Thank you for your deputation, Ms Schmidt. Would you like to take questions from elected members?
I certainly would take questions tonight because a certain councillor Howling is not here.
All right. Well, I'll take that as meaning you're happy to take questions.
Yeah, I am
Councillors?
happy tonight because I won't be intimidated or
All right.
interrogated.
No adverse reflections on any councillors, please. Councillors, any questions for Ms Schmidt this evening? No.
Okay, thank
Thank you for your deputation. All right. I'd now like to invite Ms Bronwyn David of South Perth, who is speaking for the officer recommendation at item 10.3.1. Welcome to you, Ms David. The microphone is yours and we look forward to your deputation.
Good evening, Councillor, Mayor, City staff, the Monitor. I prepared to address two items on the agenda tonight and hence I wore my T-shirt. But now I'll just be addressing one, the item about heritage, and this was the extent of my what I was going to say about heritage, and the rest of it was about the other motion. So that represents a huge waste of my time, about which I'm not particularly impressed. So anyway, I'm delighted that the place-specific reviews have resulted in strong recommendations for inclusion on the local heritage survey, in some cases extending the coverage to interior elements or separating places to reflect their individual significance. I urge Council to agree with the officer's recommendation to request an updated survey reflecting this new information and to adopt the updated survey. As previous speakers have indicated, for some of these places, this represents the second or third time they've been before an expert. I would urge councillors to take the expert's advice. Why else would you employ an expert unless you were prepared to take their advice? And their advice has been so consistent over such a long period of time that there must be something in that advice. Ratepayers certainly get very annoyed when you employ experts and don't take their advice because that's just money down the drain. I might also add, because I've got time, because I'm not speaking about anything else, to say that in respect of number 49 Forest Street, previously 44 Angelo Street, it is the only house in our area designed and built by the early 20th century's most preeminent West Australian architect and war hero, Sir Talbot Hobbs. And whilst I understand the owner's attitude that they don't wish to be burdened by a heritage listing, the fact is that it is only an entry on a survey at this point that is recommended. There are two other commercial buildings built by, designed by and built by Talbot Hobbs in the area. One is the Windsor Hotel, and the other is what's known as the old, is it the Borders Dining Room building at Wesley, underneath the library, and they both have heritage, are on the heritage survey, so it strikes me as odd when we've discovered the only domestic house in the area built by the same important architect that it shouldn't also be listed on the survey. And you can't tell me that they haven't changed the bathrooms and kitchens at the Windsor Hotel in all of the time that it's been on the survey. So things change, but we have to take them as they are at this point. It also hasn't escaped my notice that it's recommended to create 2 place records for the Royal Perth Golf Club, the house and the golf course itself, with this course given a number 2 classification, just one short of the top heritage classification. It is a shame that the course is about to be substantially changed by the removal of trees, the presence of which likely contributed to that classification. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your deputation, Ms David. Would you like to take questions from councillors?
I'm happy to.
Okay. Councillors, any questions for Ms David? No?
Thank you
All
very
right.
much.
Thank you very much for your deputation. Okay, that concludes item 8. We now move to item 10, which is the draft March reports. So I'll now hand you over to our Director of Infrastructure, Ms Anita Amprimo, to take you through the balance of the draft March reports.
Thank you, Mayor. So item 10.1.1, RS/2025, provision of minor change room upgrades at various city sites. This report recommends council accept a proposal from West to West Carpentry Services Pty Limited, trading as West to West Group, for the provision of minor change room upgrades at various city sites.
Thank you, Ms Amprimo. Councillors, any questions for the administration on this item, bearing in mind that there is a confidential attachment? No. Next item, please, Ms Amprimo.
Item 10.3.1, Local Heritage Survey Place-Specific Review. At its ordinary meeting held on 28 October 2025, Council adopted the Heritage List and requested place-specific reviews, including consideration of built form, be undertaken for 5 places in the Local Heritage Survey, including ensuring, where relevant, that the statement of significance of each place is consistent with the State Register of Heritage Places. The outcome of these place-specific reviews is presented to Council for consideration.
Thank you, Ms Amprimo. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I understand that the recommendation from the Heritage Architect is for Category 1 for Wesley College, and recommendation to establish the primary and secondary significance. Can you just give a sort of like explanation of the difference between those two in terms of a DA process?
Ms Shaw.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you for the question. It may help if I also explain some of the background to Wesley College in terms of some of the commentary that have been made in the deputations tonight. So for clarification, Wesley College is not currently included on the city's local heritage list. It is still included in the local heritage survey as a Category 1 place. Wesley College is included on the State Register of Places, and by virtue of that means it then becomes what's known as a heritage protected place for the purposes of the Planning and Development Local Planning Schemes Regulations 2015. So that then means in respect to a development application, unless otherwise exempt by the regulations, a development application is always required for that site. So even if a portion of the site does not contain heritage, a development application is otherwise required for that site. In terms of how we then go about assessing that application, we then look at the statement of significance contained within the place record itself to determine the impact that that development application would have on the heritage values outlined within the statement of significance. And so in terms of the confusion about the portion of the site that may be on the record, the entire site is listed as 20 Coode Street in the Inherit, so the state government record. There's a plan in the state government's record for Inherit that shows a portion of the site. That plan is an extract from Google Maps which depicts the location of the current heritage buildings on the site, but the site itself is what's listed in Inherit. And that also reflects the Heritage Department's guidelines in respect to local heritage surveys, which recommends that the cadastral boundaries of the site are included. In terms of how that then relates to the Heritage Act and the Local Heritage Survey, the Heritage Act itself defines what a place is, which does not refer to the cadastral boundaries, but does include either contiguous areas of land or the lot itself or multiple iterations of that lot. So it can be adjacent lot boundaries in one place record. However, if consistent with the recommendation for St Columba's Church Group, there's a recommendation that it could be split into 2 different place records to reflect the lot boundaries itself.
Thank you, Ms Shaw. Councillor Russell.
Thank you. So the table of recommendations, the site is 40 Coode Street. So is 40 Coode Street inclusive of the boarding school and the science building? or does that come under, I can't remember what you said, the adjoining possible properties?
Ms. Shaw?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll just have to refer to the recommendation that's been provided by the applicant, but I will note that the intent of the officer recommendation is to simply note the outcome. Should council resolve to proceed with the officer recommendation, the intent is that we would then go and liaise with the consultants to prepare updated place records and have those presented to council for consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Shaw. Councillors, any further questions on this item? Councillor Razon?
Thank you, through you, Mr Mayor, for Director Shaw. I hear the concerns from the community in relation to how long this process has taken, and that's happened for a number of reasons. When I look at the proposed recommendation, the next step is to have these properties, let's get the wording exactly right, to prepare and present to council an updated local heritage survey. Is there a reason in the timing that the next step in the process can't be done at the same point in time and then to move into the advertising? I just want, might be helpful to understand the next steps so that we can consider whether there is a way for us to add those. Thank
Ms.
you.
Shaw?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So the reason that the officer recommendation did not present updated place-specific records for advertising as part of this recommendation is that we didn't want to proceed to having those created if council did not agree with the recommendations provided by the consultant. So, for example, if council disagreed with any of the proposed classifications of significance or the recommendation to split St Columba's into 2 separate place records, we would have otherwise gone ahead and prepared that body of work. So should council agree with the place-specific reviews, we can prepare those updated place records to represent to council, and we could do that very quickly. We have the information. It would be a case of updating our existing records and creating the new record. Should council then proceed to advertise the local heritage survey with those updated place records, that would typically be undertaken for at least 21 days. The advertising period's not prescribed in the Heritage Act, following which council would then need to adopt those places and the updated local heritage survey. At that point in time, any places that are recommended as category 1 or 2 places, the city would recommend that they're included in the heritage list. And that's consistent with the approach that we took towards drafting the heritage list last year. Council is then required to undertake further consultations with the owners and occupiers of those properties prior to including those places on the heritage list. And that's a statutory requirement of the regulations.
Thank you. Just to drill into that a little bit more, so when for the next step to happen, when you say it could be brought quite quickly, would that be to the next meeting? Is that what you're meaning by that?
Ms. Shaw?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. That would obviously be subject to the CEO's approval in preparing the agenda, but we could prepare the place records quite quickly, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Councillors, any further? Yes, Councillor Lees.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I note that in the consultant's report, when it's referring to primary and secondary significance reflected in the Heritage Survey, that it talks to this areas within the secondary zones of significance still require referral to the city for comment. However, the process will be streamlined as officers will be able to directly reference where said developments are taking place to quickly determine that no further actions are required. So can you please explain, could the administration explain what that would look like, what that means?
Ms. Shaw?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So I think the intent of the consultant here, and I'll note that we simply provided exactly what the consultants had prepared to council as the attachment. We believe the intent of the consultant here was to update the statement of significance to clearly show within that information where the areas of significance on the site were, which is reflected of the image that's contained in the inherit record. And so officers, when they're undertaking an assessment, would be able to refer to that statement of significance to clearly see which buildings are contained within areas that have more of a heritage impact than other areas on the site. but a development application would still be required for any location on the site regardless, because it is a heritage protected place under the regulations.
Thank you, Ms Shaw. Councillors, any further questions? Councillor Brenda Abrandis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tonight we heard about the St Joseph's Convent as being a separate listing on the state. Could I just have a bit of understanding as to what benefits it would be if it was actually separately listed? And also, if there's, to what extent would this be considered a development opportunity? Obviously, it's just been marketed as such. If you could provide any advice or any comments with regard to that.
Ms Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the City agrees with the consultant's recommendations to include them into two separate listings. Given the tenure itself and the distinct cadastral boundaries, it would be easier to reference the intended purpose and the history of each of those sites. In terms of the development potential, the current site at 16 York Street is zoned private community purposes. Local Planning Scheme number 7 has certain development standards relating to non-residential development on the site, and that's effectively buildings there have to have a maximum of 2 stories. The street setback is, I think, 7.5 metres, so that doesn't pertain to residential development. Within the deemed provisions of the planning regulations, there is a section that enables site and development standards to be varied where it impacts a heritage place, but a heritage place for the purposes of that clause is a place that's on the heritage list or the state list. And so if a development application came in for the site where it is contained on the state or the local heritage list, the city or the decision maker, be it the DAP or the council, would have the ability to vary any scheme or residential design codes requirements where it otherwise resulted in preservation of the heritage values of the site. So how that typically presents is the building that has the heritage value would be retained with an appropriate curtilage, and higher density would be provided on the balance of the site to otherwise offset the land that's been provided to retain the heritage portion of the site.
Thank you, Ms Shaw. Councillor Brenda Abrandis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Director Shaw. And just a final question with regard to Wesley College. So tonight we heard that the Borders dining room was Joseph Talbot Hobbs constructed. Does that form part of the boarding house that was also raised this evening in a deputation? Thank you.
Ms Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not aware of that, but if council proceeds to update or prepare a new place record, that would be advertised to Wesley College, and they have the opportunity to provide us additional information that they would seek to have included in the statement of significance.
Thank you, Ms Shaw. Councillor Lees, did I see your hand go up there?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So one question I did have was whether, and I can't see any reference to it in the consultant's report, but whether the consultant looked at or considered any of the trees on any of these larger properties to be of cultural heritage significance.
Ms Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, they wouldn't have, for 2 reasons. Trees are only included if they have cultural heritage significance. So, for example, if they've been planted by a notable person rather than just the amenity value of the tree. The second being that the brief that was provided to the consultants was consistent with Council's resolution, which related to the built form heritage values of the place and alignment with any state heritage listing.
Thank you, Ms Shaw. Councillor Lees.
So just following on from that, I am aware of trees of cultural heritage significance being heritage listed, which is what you were suggesting. And I'm just wondering whether there are any trees, but the consultant didn't consider that, but there may potentially be some trees there that have some historical significance behind them.
Ms Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not aware of any, but we can undertake further research to see if there are any on the site, and we can engage and liaise with the heritage consultants in that respect should council proceed to prepare updated place records.
Thank you.
Any further questions, councillors? Councillor Lees.
Just a further question in relation to the suggestion of inconsistency between the state listing and the local survey listing that is being proposed here, what impact does that have? You suggested that regardless if it's on the lot, then it still needs approval because it is a heritage listed property. So is there any significance of the variations in the lot boundaries or the heritage boundaries that are being proposed?
Ms Shaw?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Sorry, can I just clarify that I assume you're referring to Wesley College? Yes, thank you. So it makes no difference in terms of a development application because it's still required given it's a heritage protected place under the regulations. The statement of significance that was originally provided as part of the local heritage survey reflected the statement of significance that was provided in the inherit database anyway. The point of contention relates to an image as part of the inherit listing that shows only a portion of the site that has a pin drop in it that says where the heritage buildings are.
Thank you, Ms Shaw. Councillor Lees?
So just to be clear, regardless of what that shows on the heritage listing or what we show on our listing, if some alterations were proposed to the new building being constructed, I think we all know where that is, the larger building, gym building, that would require development approval.
Ms Shaw?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, unless otherwise exempt by the planning regulations.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Councillors, Councillor Rezon?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This question's in relation to the St Columba's Group listing. Happy for the question to be taken on notice. In the report, it says that the two sites at 16 York and 25 Forest are connected thematically, so they share historical connections, yet the recommendation is that they be split due to the different ownership, is my understanding. Is there any way that those, through the State Heritage Register, that those two sites, if they're split, will somehow be able to retain those thematic similarities between the two places if they are split?
Ms Shaw?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This statement of significance can reflect the history of the original place record as well and can contain information related to how the sites were originally interconnected.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Shaw. Councillors, any further questions on this item? No. Next item, please, Ms Ampremo.
Item 10.3.2, Local Planning Policy P351.14, Signia Cove Residential Design Guidelines Revocation. This report proposes the revocation of Policy P351.14, Signia Cove Residential Design Guidelines, as all lots of the subject of the policy have either been developed or subject to development approval. Revocation of redundant local planning policies will ensure that the City of South Perth's local planning framework is contemporary and fit for purpose.
Thank you, Ms Ampremo. Councillors, any questions on this item? No. Next item, please, Ms Ampremo.
Item 10.3.3, RFT 13/2025, provision of survey services. This report recommends Council to accept a proposal from BCE Surveying Pty Limited for provision of survey services.
Thank you, Ms Ampremo. Councillors, any questions on this item, bearing in mind that there is a confidential attachment? No. Next item, please, Ms Ampremo.
Item 10.4.1, Delegation DC 690, Local Planning Scheme Number 7. This report presents amendments to Council Delegation DC 690, Local Planning Scheme Number 7, which are intended to ensure functions in the Planning and Development Local Planning Schemes Regulations 2015 are prescribed in delegation for Council oversight. This report was deferred to this meeting by Council at the February Ordinary Council meeting, Resolution 0226/026.
Thank you, Ms Ampremo. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In terms of the exceptions, I believe there's now the number of dwellings has gone from 9 to 5. What's the basis of 5 now?
Ms Shaw.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. That was as a result of our elected member feedback from a workshop on delegations.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Lees, did I see your hand go up there?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I note there is a suggestion that applications which involve well, at the moment, under the draft, the applications which involve tree damaging activities, the delegations wouldn't extend to those. And there is a proposal to change that. I just wanted to be clear, I don't necessarily have a problem with that, but I just wanted to be clear whether the administration is comfortable with that, not with the city officers determining that, and in particular the requirement under local planning policy for trees not to be trees to be removed where they make development unfeasible, and in the opinion of the city, and how the city would determine that or whether the city would have any difficulties in determining that if the delegation was extended on that matter. I'm not sure if I made that clear or not.
Ms. Shaw.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So the city's, the officer recommendation is as contained within the attachment, which is obviously that the delegation does not extend to such applications. I haven't had the opportunity to liaise with the CEO about that question, but I'm speaking in terms of how we would go about assessing such an application. I think our preference would be that council still retains the ability to determine applications where there's the removal or the killing of a tree. And the reason being is because one of the objectives of local planning policy 3.2 is to retain trees. So any decision by the city would be contrary to that objective. What the city could potentially consider is applications under delegation where there is significant pruning beyond maintenance pruning or cutting of limbs and things like that to maintain the tree. That's something that we could seek advice from an arborist in terms of whether or not it would result in the killing of the tree and determine an application under delegation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shaw. Councillor Lees.
Does anyone else have any questions?
Any other questions, councillors? I think it's you.
Okay. So the let me get my head around my questions here. There is a delegation under the draft for minor changes to the local planning policies to be dealt with by officers. I just wasn't clear whether that was just the advertising of those amendments or the approval of the amendments as well.
Ms. Shaw.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's both. So it would be the ability to make minor amendments to a local planning policy without advertising. So, for example, Joint Development Assessment Panel isn't named as such anymore. We would be able to just update the policy without advertising. It's here nor there. If council decides to provide us that ability, we can still bring reports back to council for minor amendments to local planning policies.
So just to be clear, when we talk about minor amendments, what would those include?
Ms. Shaw.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So, for example, if there are changes to the residential design codes that conflicted with a policy that wasn't for the purpose of amending the R codes, if council adopted a local planning policy that had, say, for example, the waste management policy that has provisions, updating other existing local planning policies consistent with that. I also note that any amendment to a local planning policy could be considered by council, and council does have the ability to waive advertising requirements as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shaw. Councillor Lees.
I think that will do me.
All right. Any other questions, councillors? No. Next item, please, Ms. Ampremo.
Item 10.4.2, budget review for the period up to 31 January 2026. To present to council the outcome of the city's mid-year budget review for the period of 1 July 2025 to 31 January 2026, as required by the Local Government Financial Management Regulations 1996, the regulations.
Thank you, Ms. Ampremo. Councillors, any questions on this item? Councillor Brenda Brandis.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Obviously, at the mid-year review stage, we've identified that we've got about $4.9 million that could be attributed to 4 reserves, including 2 new reserves. Could I just have a bit of an understanding as to the process that was undertaken for determining the amounts that we're allocating to these reserves and also to the new reserves, one being the Community Safety Reserve and the other one being the Environmental Sustainability Reserve? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I note we don't have either of the authors here tonight, so I guess I'll throw that to Ms Amprimo, but I would understand, yeah. Oh, of course, Mr Lecoq, in a position to answer that one?
Through the Mayor. So a lot of that was based on preliminary feedback out of the council plan that has been happening, as well as a sense of the direction that council has been given as to areas that need attention within the city, being community safety, environmental sustainability. And then obviously just looking at the parking situation across the city as well. And then, as you all know, the community facilities themselves, we also need funding for extended community facilities within the city. So there's obviously nothing binding council to those, but that was the general sense that was that the CEO and the Director of Corporate Services determined out of that process with council and those items that I've mentioned.
Thank you, Mr Lecoq. Councillor Brenda Abrandis.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Mr Lecoq. So, yeah, just for my understanding as to, was there a process that was undertaken to determine that these activities or initiatives would actually be the highest beneficiaries of our surplus? Just a following question with regard to this. I understand through the council plan that this is obviously, these are indicated initiatives that we should be considering. But maybe a question for the administration, should we incorporate these as part of our budget workshop process where we not only review everything for the next financial year, but in conjunction with all of the initiatives that we consider are a priority and therefore consider these as part of the budget workshop process, just that I'm mindful that council actually hasn't had any involvement in discussing what our initiatives are for committing this money.
Thank you for the question. Mr Lecoq?
It is open to council to consider that and give that direction that we discussed that as part of the budget workshops coming up as well.
Thank you. Councillors, any further questions on this item? I think Councillor D'Souza was first there.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is to Mr Lecoq through Mr Mayor. One of the most recent revenue measures as a city we've adopted is bus shelter advertising. And in the mid-year review, it's come in at a negative 55k variance. Just wanted to confirm or clarify with Mr Lecoq, is there any sort of rationale for this, or is there any further workshops or briefings that is recommended for council in this regard?
Mr Lecoq?
Through the Mayor. So you may recall that the bus shelter advertising was based on the type of shelter, and a part of that program was that the incumbent would actually go through a process of updating, I think, 5 of those shelters to digital advertising shelters that has advertisements on both sides. That process has not occurred yet, so they're currently just paying the lower level of advertising revenue based on the static advertising that is present there. So literally the upgrading to the higher standard of shelter has taken longer than anticipated. And in actual fact, the budget assumed that by the time that all of that goes live and relevant, all of that would be in place, but it is not the case.
Thank you, Mr Lecoq. Councillor D'Souza?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just to follow up, so it really is just a delay until we book that revenue.
Mr Lecoq?
Through the Mayor, that's correct, yeah.
Thank you. Councillors, any further questions on this item? Councillor Russell?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So I can see that the city are posting a surplus from last year's budget, which it's gone from 7.6 to 14.3 million. So that represents a $6.7 million surplus, which is more than 10% of the rate revenue for this financial year. Could the city sort of like give us a breakdown of why we've got such a surplus? Where exactly is that surplus coming from?
Mr Lecoq.
Through the Mayor, I'll take you back to the annual report that was just adopted in December, and I'll explain that at a very high level. We had significant savings in expenditure and a significant upswing in revenue, and those two elements combined is largely responsible for that surplus. I think, again, the question that you're posing is a little bit relating to the annual report, but from memory, we had approximately an additional $2 million in revenue, largely of fees and charges. And then we had a significant saving in materials and contracts as an outcome out of the annual report process.
Thank you, Mr Lecoq. Any further questions, councillors? I think Councillor Elise was first there.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I note in the Community Safety Reserve, it's intended to be used for the purposes of, it refers to assets and infrastructure within the district. So I'm just wondering about the potential for the funds in the reserve to provide for a community patrol service and whether that's intended or not.
Mr Lecoq.
It really depends on the purpose of the reserve and what that can be utilised for. It's worthwhile noting that should council choose to adopt this reserve, there's nothing prohibiting council from, during the budget process, to put up that we amend the purpose to be wider and more encompassing to allow for other actions or purposes out of that reserve as well.
Thank you, Mr Lecoq. Councillor Elise.
So if it's not the patrol service, can you sort of expand on what sort of things it might cover, please?
Mr Lecoq.
To the best of my knowledge, at this point in time, it's so there's no specific expenditure identified through the budget review. So you will see from the budget review purposes, there's no expenditure allocated out of that reserve. So other than establishing the reserve and notionally putting that money aside for a future purpose, there's no expenditure allocated. So I am unable to tell you what that would be. And I would say that a conversation during the budget 26-27 process to set what that would be would probably be a better outcome.
Thank you, Mr Lecoq. Councillor Brenda Brandis.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. With reference to the attachments, Section 6.1 of the Local Government Act and Regulation 17 referenced with regard to the reserve accounts. My question is just with regard to the process, because we actually, in this item, are proposing 2 new reserve accounts. Do we need to go through an advertising process, and do we need to commence that as part of this motion if this item was actually to be approved at the ordinary council meeting? Thank you.
Mr Lecoq.
Through the Mayor, the regulations that you're specifically referring to and the Act covers if there's a change in the purpose and the application of funds to a reserve, not the establishment of a new reserve. So in other words, say for example, during the course of a year, council decides that it would like to repurpose funds in a specific reserve and use it for another purpose, and this is not done at budget time, then that triggers an advertising process or a notice period. The establishment of a brand new reserve does not have that requirement attached to it in the Act and the regulations.
Thank you, Mr Lecoq. Councillor Brenda Brandis.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Mr Lecoq. And just a final question with regard to the delays in the capital expenditure at the Collie Park Golf Course. So obviously a significant amount of capital expenditure is actually affecting both sides of the transaction. Could I just have an understanding as to what impact the delay is going to have on the timing of delivery of those capital works, and if that is actually going to cause us any cost escalation with the delays as well? Thank you.
Mr Lecoq.
Through the Mayor, at this point in time, indications are that all costs will stay as they are in terms of the current cash flows and the signed construction agreement. So there's no immediate concerns or indication at this point in time that there's a problem in that space. In terms of it's large figures that you're seeing coming through in terms of the delay, but in actual fact, in terms of the construction payments, we're talking about 2 or 3 months, which is not significant.
Thank you, Mr Lecoq. Councillor Russell?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I can see that there's new project works here for Como Beach River Wall repairs, 150k, and Redmond Street works to prevent further erosion of the embankment of 120k. Quite significant funds which have needed to be sourced outside of a budget process. So can I understand, as part of the asset register, were these flagged, red flagged as needing to be repaired?
Ms Amprema?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. So those two particular ones are a result of erosion that has occurred in the asset, so they weren't identified. And the one at Como Beach is a temporary short-term fix. There is likely to be long-term works there in excess of $1 million required to permanently resolve that issue.
Okay. Were they red flagged at all? I mean, was the asset management able to put a risk category against these items?
Ms Amprema?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. So the city is aware that there are a number of assets in poor condition along the whole river frontage. And we address them by short-term repairs or replacement where we have those programmed.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions, councillors? Councillor Lees.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This might not be a very smart question, but please bear with me because these matters are not my area of expertise. But what are the implications if we don't set up these reserves in terms of this money just goes back into the funds?
Mr Lecoq.
Through the Mayor, so the funds will just remain in the municipal fund overall, and you are free then also to, during the budget setting process, consider it and decide on an allocation or an application of those funds.
So at that point, we could set up reserves for these or any other items that we might at that time through the budget process determine are appropriate, or through the council plan process.
Yeah, through the Mayor, that is correct. So effectively what would happen once council adopts the 26-27 budget, those reserves will become effective, and then during the course of the 26-27 financial year, funds will be allocated towards them as per the adopted budget.
So, sorry, Mr Mayor, so that would provide us with an opportunity for the council to workshop the priorities that have been suggested here and any other priorities.
Mr Lecoq.
Through the Mayor, that's correct, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brenda Brandis.
No, thank you. It's okay, Mr.
Any further questions on this item, councillors? No. Next item, please, Ms Ampremo.
Item 10.4.3, Design Review Panel Appointment of Members. The purpose of this report is for Council to consider appointing members to the City of South Perth Design Review Panel for a 2-year period.
Thank you, Ms Ampremo. Councillors, any questions? Councillor D'Souza. And just remembering we've got a confidential attachment, of course.
Sure. Noted. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Local Planning Policy 6.2 requires our design review panel to have 6 members. This item proposes we expand the membership up to 10 members. Just my question is there any concern or risk that might negatively impact continuity of the current 6 members? Sort of by the time they get in, and it's only a 2-year term, they have the chance to get across the city's planning issues. Is that a concern at all, or not really?
Ms. Shaw?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, it's not a concern because the membership is a pool, and depending on the expertise of the member and the nature of the application will determine who we call upon to form the panel to assess that application.
Thank you, Ms. Shaw. Councillor De Souza?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One further question. Towards the end of the report, it mentions we oftentimes effectively loan out our DRP to the City of Mandurah and the Shire of Murray. I'm just confirming if it's done on a cost recovery basis in terms of what the members' fees are or what the actual application fee for a DRP assessment is.
Ms. Shaw?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. They're currently paying the fees as prescribed in Council's adopted fees and charges. And so one of the recommendations as part of the budget setting process this year is to consider an appropriate fee where a local government seeks to use the design review panel, which could be a lesser amount if Council wanted to be generous to other local governments, or it could be full cost recovery.
Thank you, Ms. Shaw. Any further questions, councillors? Councillor Russell?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I understand from the applicable policy that the chairperson is actually selected by the CEO and not by the council. I mean, here we're seeing that council is selecting applicant A as the chairperson. Is there something amiss here?
Ms. Shaw?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll have to take that question on notice. My understanding from previous resolution was that Council had also appointed the chairperson, but I'll check for any conflict.
Any further questions, councillors? No. Next item, please, Ms. Amprema.
Item 10.4.4, Annual General Meeting of Electors 2024-25. This report is to present to Council the minutes of the Annual General Meeting of Electors held on Monday, 9th February 2026.
Thank you, Ms. Ampremo. Councillors, any questions? No. Next item, please, Ms. Ampremo.
Item 10.4.5, a listing of payments, February 2026. This report presents to Council the list of accounts paid under delegated authority between 1 February 2026 to 28 February 2026, purchase card transactions between 1 January 2026 to 31 January 2026.
Thank you, Ms. Ampremo. Councillors, any questions on this item? No. Next item, please, Ms. Ampremo.
Item 10.4.6, Monthly Financial Statements, February 2026. To present to Council financial statements for February 2026.
Thank you. Councillors, any questions on this item for the administration tonight? No. Okay. Then that concludes item 10. That we move on to item 12, which is motions of which previous notice has been given. There's one item here. It's item 12.1, entitled Notice of Motion, Transport Advocacy. Councillors, any questions on this item? Councillor Raison.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Just under the paragraph 1 background, there's some statistics in there. Since this notice of motion was initially proposed, we have had the community survey results come in, and there was information in that survey in relation to statistics around people commuting to work. So my question, which can be taken on notice, is do the statistics that are in here and the data that is included marry with the newest information that we've got through the community survey? And we may, I understand, not know where Councillor Coveney attained this information. So that's my question, if I can just leave that one on notice, please.
Thank you. Ms. Amprema?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So obviously the information contained in there is as presented to the council previously, but we can cross-check the information. We wouldn't update the report, but we can cross-check the information and get back to you.
Thank you. And next question is in relation to paragraph 2. At the end of last year, when I raised the question about safety of people coming off the ferry and walking up to the zoo, I understand from memory that there was a main roads report or meetings to be happening, or a traffic survey for the peninsula. And I'm just wondering if you could give us an update on that, please.
Ms. Amprema?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So That report has just recently come into the city and we're reviewing the contents of that now.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Another question, Ms. Sorry,
This is just
Councillor
while we're on
Raison.
traffic is what's happening outside Coles off Angelo Street at the moment, the new crossing. I've been asked on a tangent, but if you know, that'd be great.
Ms. Prima.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the crossing is currently being constructed.
Thank you.
Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So with regard to 2A, it says with information relating to additional travel demand associated with land use change and population growth in the city of South Perth. Are we specifically talking about, are we talking about the entire district of the city of South Perth, or hotspots? Will the city just concentrate on the hotspots where these signal council support under 2B is likely to be, i.e. around the structure plans?
Ms. Prima.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So the notice of motion, just to be clear, the background section is the reasoning that was provided by former councillor Nick Coveney. So the comments that are provided in there are not from the administration, they're from former councillor Nick Coveney.
Any further questions, councillors? No. Okay. That brings us to item 15, which is where we would ordinarily close the meeting to the public if there was any reason for us to do so, but there's not, so we won't. And that brings us to item 16, which is closure. So before I close tonight's meeting, I'd like to thank everyone for your attendance and participation this evening. I close the meeting at 7:21 p.m. Thank you all, and good night.